Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava so much to all the devotees here. And before we begin, just wanted to wanted to make sure. Okay. That's the one. Okay, good. So we'll be today looking at chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita, in accordance with the summary study that the devotees have been doing here. And so chapter 8 is entitled Attaining the Supreme. So we will summarize the chapter altogether, but in order to also begin by chanting one of the shlokas, we'll start actually with the first verse, 8.1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo
Text 1. We can do call and response. Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam.
Kim tat Brahma Kim Adhyatmam.
Kim karma purushottama.
Kim Karma Purushottama.
Adhibhutam cha kim proktam.
Adhibhutam cha Kim Proktam.
Adhidaivam kim uchyate.
Adidevam Kim Uchyate.
Translation. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. So we can do word for word. Just wanted to read the translation so we can meditate on this. Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna said,
Arjuna said,
Kim,
Kim,
what?
what?
Tat,
Tat,
that.
that.
Brahma,
Brahma,
Brahman.
Brahman.
Kim,
Kim,
what?
what?
Adhyatmam,
Adhyatmam,
the self.
the self.
Kim,
Kim,
what?
what?
Karma,
Karma,
fruitive activities.
fruitive activities.
Purusha uttama,
Purusha Uttama,
O Supreme Person.
O Supreme Person.
Adhibhutam,
Adhibhutam,
the material manifestation.
material manifestation.
Cha,
Cha,
and.
and
Kim, what?
what?
Proktam,
Proktam
is called.
is called.
Adhidaivam,
Adidevam,
the demigods.
the demigods.
Kim,
Kim,
what?
what?
Uchyate,
Uchyate
is called.
is called.
So we'll read the translation once again and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deena Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusudhe Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine. So before we begin, I just would like to sincerely seek the blessings of all of the devotees who are here, that we can have a meaningful, uplifting, inspiring discussion of Krishna's message in Bhagavad Gita, and that we can all find some way to feel charged up and inspired and given some nice momentum and meditation for our spiritual life. So, thank you. Seeking the blessings of everyone. Thank you. Okay. So yes, chapter 8, entitled Attaining the Supreme. So, sometimes questions are just as sacred as the answers, right? Answers are very alluring because we want to hear, we want to know where everything ends up, even in material sense, right? Sometimes if we're in suspense in some way, we just want to know what's happening. But in spiritual life also, as is emphasized in Bhagavad Gita, is so beautiful, it takes the form of question and answer, dialogue. And Arjuna's questions are so sacred and so beautiful because they echo the questions that are there within our hearts as living entities trying to navigate this very complex circumstance here in this material world in Kali Yuga, what to speak of in Kali Yuga. So Arjuna's questions are so nice because Arjuna, though he's a pure devotee, he's a personal associate of Krishna, he's asking these questions for our benefit ultimately, right? That this knowledge may be passed on, that we can hear these questions which echo the questions we have within our hearts, and sometimes actually bring questions into our viewpoint that we didn't even know we had. It's like, somewhere deep within, we're yearning. We have these questions. Our soul is really longing for understanding on a deeper level. Yet we may not even feel that we had these questions at first. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says there are 4 types of people who seek spiritual understanding. So that's those who are looking for knowledge of the absolute, those who are distressed, those who are seeking wealth, and those who are just by nature inquisitive people. So we're very fortunate if under any circumstance, including distress, if we can turn to Krishna, we can turn to our spiritual search in some way by virtue of any of these four points of origin, then we're very fortunate. So Arjuna poses several questions to Krishna in this verse that we just read about big topics, we can say. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada enumerates these topics. He says that Krishna explains in this chapter 8, Brahman, karma, fruitive activities, devotional service and yoga principles, and finally devotional service in its pure form. So Arjuna also inquires about the Atma, the body, soul, and mind, the self. And of course, Krishna is situated within the heart as Paramatma, as the capital S, self, right? So all of us as Jivatmas, we are originated from Paramatma, the supreme self, the supreme Atma, who is none other than Krishna. So this conversation in Bhagavad Gita also can be viewed as conversation between Arjuna, who is a Jivatma, a very elevated Jivatma, but also speaking with Krishna, who is with all of us as Paramatma, and also is, of course, Bhagavan, is the supreme personality of Godhead. He's there in his personal form. So Krishna and Arjuna also discuss very heavily in this chapter, and something we can enter into. They discuss very heavily the moment of death, the time of transitioning from this world into our next destination. And in text number 5, Arjuna first poses this question to Krishna. Just go ahead and read the English. Arjuna says to Krishna, pardon me. Text 2 is the question. Arjuna asks Krishna, who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Krishna in text 5 addresses this by saying, and whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So Krishna is revealing something very confidential, that in order to reach him, in order to attain his eternal abode in particular, one must be remembering him, remembering his nature at the time of death. And this is quite glorious, that Krishna is giving this answer so directly, but also it may feel to some of us quite daunting. How is it that at the end of life, oh my goodness, in this moment, how can I actually bring myself to this point of remembrance of Krishna? There may be so many things going on. I may be in great pain, I may be in great discomfort, right? These are honest thoughts that we can feel about this moment of death. And sometimes death is referred to as life's final exam, right? So there is something quite imposing about the moment of death, which is why so many people are afraid of death. Because it's a reckoning of sorts, right? That whatever we've done in our life, at the time of death, we're kind of faced with all of that in some very deep, kind of indescribable way, right? We know, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that we've lived many lifetimes. So we've died before. We've actually left the body before. But of course the soul, we know, is eternal, nitya, never dies. The soul is pure spirit. But but Krishna remembers all of our lives, and we don't remember all of them. It would be quite overwhelming if we did. So Krishna remembers all of our lives. So for us, as living entities in this material world, we have the sensation that we have never left the body before. And so for us, it's very imposing. We can't imagine what it's like. And so Krishna assures Arjuna that if we remember Krishna at the time of death, then we come to be with him. So again, how does this happen? Because Krishna in this chapter, another teaching that he shares is that there's the indestructible, transcendental living entity. And this is known as Brahman. Krishna says in this chapter, Brahman. So sometimes we think of Brahman also as the formless, the impersonal aspect of the Supreme Lord. But Brahman also is of spirit, so that we are spirit souls in the material body, and then we're going through this world doing karma. And Krishna shares in this chapter that karma, Prabhupada defines it really nicely in one of his purports. Karma is defined as action pertaining to the development of material bodies of living entities. So we're doing so much karma to work on this, to work on our circumstance, our various, positions in this world. And in some sense, that's all right. It's necessary. We have to maintain the material body. But what we do in this material world is also informing our state of being in a grander way, and ultimately our state of being at the time of death. So Krishna explains in this chapter that whatever state of being one is in, that state will be attained by that person at the time of death. So where is our consciousness? This is a big question, and this is the question that basically Krishna is placing into Arjuna's frame of mind, in this discussion. And it's also the question that comes into our hearts and minds if we think about this topic. We bring it into the present. We bring it in a practical way. Where is our consciousness? Speaking for myself, it's not always where it should be. And that's something that we can just very honestly reflect upon. And we pray to Krishna that we can become more and more attracted to his name, form, qualities, pastimes, activities, entourage. There's so much about Krishna that's so attractive. But sometimes we don't fully give the time and space and energy to kind of be in consciousness of Krishna so that we may be attracted. We can think of it in that way, that there's so much beauty, even in this world we can think about that. There's so much beauty in this world, relatively speaking. It's all expanded from Krishna's beauty. So there's so much beauty in this world, but if we don't take a moment to appreciate it, say for example, we're in a park and there's a beautiful sunset or something like that. And if we're, as so many of us may be doing, if we're just, looking at the phone, texting, whatever, the sunset just may come and go. And by the time you look up from the screen, it's all over, right? So in the same way, this is what we're striving to do as practitioners in Krishna consciousness. We're striving to basically expose ourselves to the beauty of Krishna. Krishna means all attractive. So no doubt, if we're in the presence of Krishna, we will become attracted. It has nothing to do with our own endeavor or anything like that. If we place ourselves in the presence of Krishna, his devotees, so many ways in which Krishna makes himself available even in this world, then we will become attracted. But it's a question of showing up for that. And sometimes the only credit we can take, right, is that we showed up, came to the temple. I got to come to the temple today because devotees gave me the opportunity, asked me to come. So it's like that. Otherwise, maybe, in a state of forgetfulness, right? So when we come together like this through Sangha, when we come together through Sangha, we get to remember Krishna. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18 that the devotees are always enlivening one another, always enlightening each other about him, and this gives them great transcendental happiness, right? So through our consciousness, we may be able to be in the attractive presence of Krishna and his devotees. He makes himself so available in Kali Yuga through the holy name, through his devotees. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, they appeared in this Kali Yuga and made this process so very accessible. And then Krishna also, Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada, Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi, that by the mercy of Krishna, one will receive also a spiritual master, receive spiritual mentor in this life. And by the mercy of that spiritual master, one will ultimately receive Krishna. So Krishna, in so many ways, is placing these merciful personalities, these merciful processes onto our path so that we can become more and more attracted to him. So we can say that remembrance at the time of death is very, very important, absolutely. But that moment of death, that remembrance at the time of death doesn't just come spontaneously, right? And I spend my whole life, doing whatever, and then all of a sudden at the time of death, okay, now's my moment to remember Krishna, and somehow we can will that. That's very hard. Maybe through some special mercy, I'm sure. Yes, of course, there are examples like that one becomes very God conscious. Even in the fear of death may be an important agent in terms of helping us to become more God conscious. We see this even among people who are not so religious, you can say. Like, the plane is coming down, people are starting to pray and look for God. And there's something beautiful about that, for sure. It's a real thing. But at the same time, a little easier if we don't have to necessarily depend upon that, rely upon the fact that in that moment we're going to call out for Krishna. And sometimes we're tested even in this life. I don't know, those among us, have been in a small accident, something like that. Sometimes in that moment we may find, okay, I was able to remember Krishna, or I was trying to just figure it out myself and I didn't really call upon Krishna in that moment. Sometimes it's like that. But through a lifetime of aspiring in devotion, this is how we arrive at that moment of that when we pass through this world, from this world, we're remembering Krishna. That comes from our day-to-day life. So that moment at the time of death must be a culmination of a lifetime of daily remembrance, right? So we're trying to remember Krishna daily through sadhana, through hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. That hearing and chanting ultimately leads to that smaranam, to that remembrance. And also this is the purpose of our sadhana, also on some level. Ultimately, on the highest level, we can say that our sadhana is for the pleasure of Krishna. That's it, right? But on a practical level, we can say also that this sadhana is very merciful in the sense that it helps us to remember Krishna more, right? We may feel a little not so inspired in our sadhana at certain times, but nevertheless, it's creating this window of opportunity for us to practice our smaranam, our remembrance of Krishna. And if we spend each day practicing, chanting Krishna's names, serving the deity, and in so many different processes, then yes, our remembrance will definitely increase by virtue of where we're placing our time and energy. What is it? They say where attention goes, energy flows. So if you're giving a little bit more attention to Krishna and to these practices of Krishna consciousness, and then our energy will go there. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to meditate upon his personal nature. In this chapter, he's describing this, to meditate upon me, he says to Arjuna, because impersonal meditation is very, very difficult. Right? There may be processes by which that can be done, yogic processes, Gyan, path of Jnana Yoga is a little bit more geared toward this impersonal meditation. But particularly in this age, that's very, very difficult. And also by nature, right? Again, going back to the fact that we're embodied living entities in this material world. And actually one thing that's very beautiful about this world is that we have relationship. If you think about what makes your life nice in this material world, you'll mostly think about relationships that you have. Loving, meaningful connections with other living entities in this world. So if we're going from this life where we have loving, meaningful connections to a meditation upon something impersonal, we'll actually feel that we lost something. Rather than going up, that we kind of went down. Most people will feel that way. So this is why Krishna encourages us to meditate upon his highest expression as Bhagavan, as his personal form. Because then relationship is there, love can be there. It's hard to love an energy. So we try to love Krishna as he is, as a personality with so many wonderful attributes. So the Lord is known as Purusha, and Purusha means person. So this is why Prabhupada so often gives this translation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna describes to Arjuna at this point, because Arjuna is still inquiring about how to attain the Supreme, as this chapter is called, at the hour of death. So Krishna describes to Arjuna in detail this yogic process in this chapter. It's very detailed, and he goes into this process. Prabhupada gives the Sanskrit term Sat Chakra Yoga, right? So using the chakras, right? And looking at how to focus the energy between the eyebrows, right? So this is a very mystical yogic process. And he goes on to explain this in great detail, and this is how the yogis, those who are mystic yogis, they may choose and elect the time also to leave. And they focus the energy there and they leave. But this fixing the life air between the eyebrows, vibrating omkara, the om, right? So this is the yogic process as Krishna explains it. Once again, we have to consider in this age how difficult such a process would be. It requires such intense discipline. In order to even get to that point, one has to completely, Prabhupada says in the purport, close the door on all sense gratification. The senses have to become inert. Sometimes the yogis are compared like a tortoise, where all of the limbs, everything, the tortoise goes inside the shell. So in the same way, all the sense organs are just go within, and there's no kind of sense contact at all. So that's very, very difficult and very imposing in this age. And so Om is also contained within the Maha Mantra. The Maha Mantra contains the potency of all mantras. This is explained. And Om sometimes is described as almost like the impersonal form of the Lord in mantra. And Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the personal presence of the Lord. The Lord's personally present within those names. He's absolutely in the syllable Om, also as he says in Bhagavad Gita. But at the same time, when we're approaching the Lord through the Maha Mantra, there's a very personal engagement there. We're actually invoking the names of Krishna, of Srimati Radharani as Hare. So this is a very personal approach to the Lord. And someone once told me that the Sanskrit case, I'm not very knowledgeable in Sanskrit, but the Sanskrit case that is used in the Maha Mantra is actually even more of a direct approach than a mantra like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, because that Aya is somehow, it's more formal. Whereas in the Maha Mantra, there's actually a very direct address of the Lord. It's actually like calling out. So like if I was speaking about Ram Tulsi Prabhu and I was saying to someone else talking about Ram Tulsi Prabhu, I'm saying his name, but I'm not addressing him like that. Whereas if I say Hare Krishna, Ram Tulsi Prabhu, like really addressing like that. So the Maha Mantra is a very powerful access to the Lord by chanting these holy names. And so, and Krishna explains that there are different circumstances and times for leaving. So in this fortnight, or in this time, or according to this nakshatra, according to this muhurta, all these different aspects of the time and the auspicious moment to leave. And once again, when we read this, more likely than not, we'll feel a bit discouraged because it just seems so imposing. So Prabhupada, in the purports, he explains across through several of these purports how for a devotee, there's no question of auspicious or inauspicious. Leaving at an auspicious time, leaving in an auspicious place, leaving even in an auspicious manner. For a devotee, for a pure devotee, full stop, it will always be auspicious. Because that devotee is living in remembrance and in service of Krishna. So there's no question of, there's an inauspicious moment to leave, or there's an inauspicious circumstance. For a devotee, it will always be auspicious, because what is more auspicious than remembrance of Krishna, and what is more inauspicious than forgetfulness of Krishna? So if the devotee is in a state of remembrance, then everything will be auspicious. Everything will be auspicious. Prabhupada explains, like a devotee who's immersed in service is like the iron rod in the fire. So the iron rod takes on the qualities of that fire. It's not fire, it's still an iron rod, but you can use that iron rod to ignite a fire, some paper, something like that. So for the devotee who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, fully absorbed in remembrance, service, and ultimately love of Krishna, then nothing will be inauspicious, because that devotee will always be in that quality of being, we can say, like on fire with love and remembrance and service to Krishna. So there are these different considerations, but what this is ultimately being shared to indicate is that it's through bhakti that one attains Krishna's eternal abode, right? So I'll read a few verses that really substantiate this. It's very important that we hear this, because this is really the sum and substance of this chapter. This is really the conclusion of this chapter. 21, 22, and 28. Okay. So 8:21 we can take a look at. Avyaktochara ityuktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyana nivartante tadhama paramam mama. Krishna says, that which the Vedantists describe as manifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. And then he goes on to say in the next verse, Purushavsa para parta bhaktya labhyastvananyaya yashyanta stani bhutani yena sarvam idam tatam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Though he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading. Everything is situated within him. So everything is situated within Krishna, and he is simultaneously present in his eternal abode of Goloka Vrindavan, enjoying, engaged in pastimes. So he's able to simultaneously be within the hearts of each and every living entity, simultaneously able to make entrance into different universes and set things in order. He's enacting his pastimes on earth. He did 5,000 years ago, and in some material universe right now, he is understood to be appearing. And at the same time, he is always enjoying in the realm of Goloka Vrindavan. So he is attainable by unalloyed devotion, he says himself. He's giving the direct understanding. So Prabhupada in the purport, he says, to enter Krishna's supreme abode or the innumerable Vaikuntha planets is possible only by bhakti, devotional service, as clearly indicated here by the word bhaktya. No other process can help one attain that supreme abode. Right? So there are different processes that can give a very, very high destination. But as far as actually being in the space of direct interaction, service with Krishna and his associates, that comes through bhakti. Because again, whatever one is meditating upon, whatever nature one has, they will attain that nature. So if one is already serving Krishna in this world, one is serving Krishna and his devotees, where will they go? They'll go to Krishna and his devotees and serve. They're chanting the glories of Krishna. Where will they go? They'll go and chant the glories of Krishna. So in this sense, they say about bhakti that the means and the end are absolute. Right? So it's very interesting, this process of bhakti, where what we're doing now, what we're aspiring to do now, is actually the very same thing, ultimately, that we're aspiring to do. It just goes deeper, it goes deeper. So you meet a pure devotee, right? They're chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We're also chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It's not that at some point, by some advancement, one stops chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, something like that. Right? It even Krishna explains also that, it's explained, I'm trying to remember where that reference is. Maybe someone can help me, but there's a reference that explains that even for the pure devotees, they need Sangha. They very much need Sangha, and they relish in Sangha. So it's not that at some point, I'm so advanced, I don't need Sangha anymore. Nothing like that. So the means and the end are absolute in bhakti. Whatever we're doing now, we're actually endeavoring toward what we will ultimately be doing in the deepest sense. So it's just a reminder also of our eternal nature. Bhakti helps us to remember who we are on a deeper level. And so we'll look at text 28 here. Vedeshu yagyeshu tapashu chaiva, different meter, sorry. Daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva yogi param stanam upaiti chadyam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing austere sacrifices, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. So what we're hearing directly from Krishna here is that by doing devotional service, this is how we attain him. Whether it's directly at the end of death that one is situated in the mood of service, or that in one's life one is engaged, trying to engage in devotional service, cultivating that remembrance of Krishna. That means that ultimately, at the time of death, one will be in that state of remembrance. One will continue. Prabhupada gives a very funny analogy. It's very humorous, but it's really strong. He says that for one who is completely absorbed in Krishna Bhakti, that when they leave this body, it will be like how an intoxicated person may or may not realize if they're wearing a shirt. It's like the body will just, like a garment, but their consciousness is so fixed, their conception is so fixed that either they're doing what they're doing here or they're doing what they're doing there, but they're always doing what they're doing because they're completely absorbed in remembrance and service and love of Krishna. So this is the path and the process for attaining the Supreme. And once again, just to say that for the devotees, there's no question of inauspicious or auspicious, and there's such mercy. And there are extreme examples also where Prabhupada said to some of his disciples, it's all right to want to go back to Godhead. It's okay. It's okay if that's our goal. But actually we see examples of devotees who are even higher in their conception. And they're saying that wherever I am, if you want me to come back, I'll come back. If you want me to serve in a hellish realm, I'll serve in a hellish realm. This is really the attitude of the pure devotee. That wherever I may be, please just keep me close to you. Let me remember you. Let me serve you. Right? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that even if the Lord handles me roughly by his embrace, he's my worshipful Lord, birth after birth. So he's saying birth after birth, not that, okay, go back to Godhead in this lifetime. But Prabhupada says that for the devotees, of course, to want to go back to Godhead, that is very beautiful. But just to show that there are so many different examples of devotees who are just, Krishna is their heart. They're remembering Krishna. And by doing that, everything will be auspicious, no matter what the circumstance. So this is a strong example of that. And also, Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he gives an example of how sometimes if we can't remember Krishna, for whatever reason, if we can't remember Krishna at the time of death, for one who has really dedicated their life to serving, loving, remembering Krishna, he says that Krishna will remember that person, even if that person can't remember Krishna at the time of death. So we're in relationship, and the more we can cultivate that relationship in this life, the more auspicious everything will be for us when we depart from this life. And if we strive, through everything that Prabhupada has given, everything that the devotees have given to be with Krishna in our own way, our own honest way, each day, then by Krishna's mercy, by the mercy of the devotees, we may remember Krishna when our time comes, and that he may favorably bring us ever closer to his lotus feet. So we'll stop here. This is our summary, chapter 8. Thank you all so much. Eager to hear everyone's reflections and questions and anything you'd like to share. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Anybody have any questions?
Draupadi Mataji, thank you so much.
You summarize very nicely, and because as you work in the hospital, and you see many people at the last moment you see. So what comes in your mind for them?
What comes in my mind for them?
Yes. What comes in your mind for them? How do you pray for them?
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for that question. Yes, definitely. I'm definitely praying for them because we see how real it is. We see how real. Sometimes death is something that we keep very theoretical, and in certain society, it depends on the society, but the culture. But certainly in the U.S., death is very, very hidden away. So hidden away, right? People don't even like to see a dead animal on the side of the road, right? And of course, we don't like to see that either. Our hearts go out to that soul. But at the same time, death is very, by design, hidden, and hospitals and everything, right? So when we see how real it is when you're really there with someone and they're leaving, for one, I'll say it's a very sacred moment. You can feel that it's a very sacred moment, and that's quite encouraging. That has helped me a lot in terms of my own outlook about death, to feel that there's something very sacred going on, and you can just feel it. You kind of feel it in the air. And so as far as praying for those people, though, what comes to mind for me is almost like we have this prayer sometimes that we offer in deity worship, mantrahinam, kriyahinam, bhaktihinam, janardana, or something, angahinam, kriyahinam, vidihinam, chayat bhavet. So this idea of whatever I have offered sincerely, whatever I have offered with love and devotion, Lord, please accept that. And any mistakes that I've made, anything that I've done in a way that was incomplete or improper, please make that complete. And please accept it. So also for us at the end of our life, that's kind of like what it is, isn't it? Right? So we can think for ourselves, we can think for others. So if I'm seeing someone, I'm thinking about they must have had a lot of loving connections in their life. Maybe sometimes the family is there. For those who are very fortunate, the family is there. For others, they may be outwardly leaving this world alone. And I feel grateful I can be with them, but at the same time, so I tried to make it so that they're not alone. But in terms of their loved ones who they shared this life with, they may not always be accompanied by those people. So I think about the ways in which they showed love in this life, and that the Lord may somehow accept that, and the ways in which they worshipped God, the ways in which they remembered God, let that be accepted, because that's a very sincere thing. It's a very rare thing in this world. So, and also so I pray for them in that way, and I also pray for them that in that moment they may feel the presence of the Lord in some way, right? And of course we know that Krishna is Bhavagrahi Janardhan. Of course this is mainly referring to bhaktas, but everyone has their own way of connecting to God. So Lord is one who understands the bhava, the mood, and accepts the mood of his devotees. So in that moment we may pray also that person's particular relationship with the Lord, whatever form that took, whatever form it's taking, that they may feel that. And Krishna says himself in Bhagavad Gita that to those who are not particularly in a devotional mindset, he makes himself known to them as death. He says in Bhagavad Gita that he is death. So we pray that in that moment that person may feel an unusual kind of comfort that either they knew at some point in their life or they never knew before, and they're feeling it now. And in that strange comfort, even at the hour of death, that they may feel that is God. God is with me right now. So I pray in that way, and and also pray that they have a positive destination in their spiritual journey, that they're coming closer in whatever way to the Lord. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
I have a question. So I was watching a video of one of a very saintly person in Vrindavan. One of the topmost saints. You must have heard about Premanand Maharaj. So he was saying, that Maharaj was saying, now if you have to attain Krishna, right, when we are chanting, in our day-to-day duties, right, to serve our family, to maintain our body, we sometimes have the tendency to say a lie, right? Like whether when we want to get a job, or even when I do some business, I change my numbers and all that, right? It happens, right?
Yeah.
To gain business.
Yes.
So it is said, like if that Lord's name is true. Now, if you are chanting and at the same time maintain yourself, you are lying at different points. The Lord will not allow you to enter into His Dham, because that is true. Because you are like lying is because you have some material gain. So that you are saying, okay, now if you have to really enter, you be truthful to yourself, like how Yudhishthir was and Sudama was. Although you will have difficulties, but God will maintain you. But by lying, even the slightest of lying, you will not lose, you will not in envy. So how do we
reconcile that?
We elevate ourselves to that level that we do not.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, and I also thank you for being so thoroughly honest in your question about being honest. You know, I really love that. You know, it takes a very honest man to be here with everyone and to share like that. So thank you. I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah, even when I go to my clients, sometimes I have to get business. I change my number and I plus minus and all that, because if I don't do that, I won't get business.
So thank you for sharing, Prabhuji. Thank you.
How can you do that?
Yeah. Okay, so I have a few thoughts here. So for one thing, it's wonderful that you're not lying to yourself. Because something in this world that we're very, very, very good at is self-deception and justification, right? So you could just as easily, right now, see, at least you're sharing so honestly about it, and you're saying, how can I make this better? For most of us, we'll say, oh, that's business. That's what you gotta do. You know, otherwise someone else is gonna get the business. You know, there's so many ways to justify and to become very hard-hearted, very hard-hearted. It's very bad. We see so much in this world, so much hate and harm and terrible things that are going on, because someone justified to themselves what they're doing. They said, oh, well, it's necessary. I don't like it, but it's necessary. Right? So much danger when we can justify all of our negative behaviors. So for one, I want to say it's amazing that it's so good that you're not justifying it to yourself. You may still do it, but you know deep down you don't want to do that. And you know that it's not the best thing you could be doing. So what we do then at that point is basically place that before Krishna. You're doing it. You're placing it before the assembled devotees. And Krishna is so happy when he actually wants us to have loving exchanges like this, honest exchanges. Darati prati grinati guyam akyati prichati bhukte bojayate chaiva sadvidam priti lakshanam. So to share that guhyam, right? To share something that is confidential within the heart and to inquire confidentially. So this is so important. So what happens, there's a mechanism for this. It's in one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, and I can find it, I'll send it to you, Prabhuji. But he describes really beautifully this mechanism of being honest in front of the devotees. Says that basically I submit my unfortunate situation in front of the devotees. The devotee then will have compassion upon me, because this is the nature of the devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyascha, right? Kalpataru, the devotees, and they're like desire trees, and they're full of compassion, right? So the devotee will have compassion, and then that devotee will pray for us. And then that devotee prays for us, and then that prayer reaches Krishna. And then Krishna gives us the strength and gives us the encouragement, gives us the clarity that we can improve that situation. So that's basically the mechanism as explained by the Acharya. But at the same time, we can also say that how do we make it better in a practical sense? That to share openly, to share honestly, and also to understand that even in this world, to whatever degree we maybe feel optimistic or pessimistic about this, honesty is actually very attractive. So if you are going about your business in a way that you also feel like you're just doing the best you can and being honest, people may also feel, wow, I feel like I can actually trust this person very deeply. Because in this Kali Yuga, we know, cheaters and the cheated, Prabhupada used the phrase, right? So if people can actually feel that they can trust someone, that goes a very long way. So your honesty will also be very attractive the more you share it. And if some people find it unattractive, they're not the right people. Who wants to deal with people who don't like honesty also? So it's like also, the more you can be honest, Krishna will send honest people your way, and you can have these very honest dealings, and everyone's better off for that. But Hare Krishna. So, but yes, according to the scriptures, I know you're saying satyam, right? The truthfulness is so important, and ultimately that is invincible. You can also remember that your honesty is invincible, in the sense that Krishna loves honesty. Krishna will always be grateful for that honesty, and even if materially somehow there's some result to being honest, we know spiritually we're so at ease because I did what was the right thing, you know. So that there's something very powerful about that. But yeah, we can all relate to this in this world. Of course, we all feel sometimes if we were less honest, somehow we would benefit, materially speaking, right? So you have to be authentic to yourself, and also as you so beautifully exemplified. And I just want to thank you again for giving this incredible example of just sharing openly and honestly with everyone. That's the best possible thing, and that will bring all blessings from the devotees, all blessings from Krishna. Honesty and vulnerability. Sometimes we miss that in our movement a little bit, to be honest, right? Sometimes we feel someone says, "How are you doing?" Everything's great, everything's perfect. You're right? It's so nice to actually, with devotees who we trust and care for, to share our issues, to share our problems. And then that's so the devotees will love that. They'll appreciate that. They'll pray for us. And Krishna will be so pleased ultimately. So I hope that addresses the question.
And also, he not easy. Also mentioned like how Yudhishthira Maharaj, like when he was asked by Krishna, like to say that the Ashwatthama is dead, that Ashwatthama of Guru Dronacharya is dead. Yudhishthira Maharaj was not ready to say the lie.
Yes.
So he also explained his chariot was like 2 feet above the ground. It came down. And then he said, okay, then he said, Ashwatthama, elephant.
Yes.
So like, one has to be, like, even he says, like, if you just keep chanting the name of the Lord, the Lord will maintain you. Even if you do not do anything, even if you don't work, you will basically, Lord will supply you with everything. So one has to be honest to enter the kingdom of the Lord. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Wonderful answer.
Thank you for the wonderful question and for being a great example of honesty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. So with loud Haribol, please thanks Deena Prabhu. Haribol! 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 You can come frequently to our center. We'll have Prashadam now. Hare Krishna. Mahaprashadi Govinde.